Hello everyone, I am Nidhi Shell, Senior Sub-Editor at Elets Technomedia, India's biggest B2B platform celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. Welcome to a brand new episode of Elets Innovation Talk. Elets Innovation Talk is a series that highlights innovative leaders across industries with a focus on highlighting groundbreaking ideas, edge-cutting solutions. This platform aims to celebrate the visionary thinkers who are driving transformational changes in their respective fields. Today, we are honored to have Aveekshith Bushan, Vice President, Asia Pacific and Japan, Aerospike. A very warm welcome.
Thank you, Nidhi. Great to be on the show.
Thanks for joining, sir. In a career spanning over 22 years, Mr. Bushan has led various roles in sales, technology, market development, and consulting. As a business leader, he is passionate about working with leaders in the space of data and solving real world technology challenges. In this current position, his responsibilities include strategizing and revolutionizing sales efforts in APAC with an eye for the long term. He plays a role in building a high performing team across the region, establishing a strong executive connection with key customers, partners, and prospects. So, to begin with, my first question for the day would be Avi, what are the key strategies and approaches that financial services institutions can adopt to stay competitive in the industry by leveraging real time technologies and architecture?
Yeah, for sure. So, before I even talk about that, right, one of the key things that we are seeing in the market today, which was not the case many years back, especially with financial services organizations, is that things are happening very, very quickly, right? You look at some of the initiatives that have happened in the recent past in the fintech world, you wouldn't have expected this kind of a pace in this industry segment many years back. And the reason this is happening is because, in many ways, the regulator, the governments, they're pushing these fintech companies to become more real time to make sure that customer experience is put at the forefront. And also, more importantly, these fintech firms understand the customers really, really well. That becomes very critical. And obviously, over and above that, there's a whole bunch of services that are being offered today, which was not there in the past. I mean, you look at mobile banking, you look at net banking, you look at online commerce, online trading that's happening, and also the payment ecosystem, be it with real-time payments, RTGS, NEFT, and also now the CBTC initiative that's come up, right? So, in some sense, if we would be wrong if we would say that the fintech industry has undergone the maximum change across all the industry segments in the last few years, and this is especially given that fintech in general is very conservative. So I think for the fintech sector, given all these challenges that they're facing, it becomes extremely important that they understand their customers better and offer services that make sense to customers. So all the banks, all the fintech firms that we work with typically, one of the key things that they're looking at is how do I, like I said, understand my customer better, but also offer them services that make sense. And also while doing that, these platforms that we offer need to be run 24 bar 7 bar 365. They cannot go down. So all the strategies and thought processes that these financial services organizations are doing are related to these typical approaches in terms of understanding the customer, offering services that matter, and most importantly, keeping the lights on, while also making sure there is no fraud in the ecosystem.
Right, correct. So, as the times are evolving, it's very important to stay ahead of the curve. And so, moving ahead, the second question would be, how does the implementation of a modern real-time database contribution to creating a comprehensive customer 360 view, enabling personalized experience and ultimately enhancing customer retention in today's dynamic market?
So one of the things that you'll find in the financial industry is the kind of services and the kind of bouquet of services that is typically offered. I, as a consumer banking user, could also be a trading user on that platform. I could also have a loan that I might have taken from the bank. I might also have a certain term deposits that I might have with the bank. In the past, identifying this and having a single view of the customer used to be a big challenge. In fact, even now, if you look at some of the large banks, they struggle with identifying the same user across all these platforms or services that are being offered.
Correct.
So one of the things is, are you able to identify this while the consumer is transacting online or interacting with the platform that we're talking about? And while doing that, are we able to offer things that make sense to him, right? Meaning, if I'm online on the mobile app and I'm browsing for a loan and looking for a loan, can I say that why don't you go for a loan and also invest in something else? Maybe invest in housing loan along with maybe some kind of instrument that would make sense. This can only happen if the customers are understood by the bank or by the financial institution. Only and only if they understand the user better can this be offered. Now, which brings us to the point of understanding the user while they transact online. It's one thing to understand the user over the last 4 years, 5 years that they've been in this particular financial institution. It's another thing to do that while he transacts online. We all know that things are changing very, very fast today, right? If I'm looking for a loan right now, my historical information and the current information becomes relevant. So in that sense, having a real-time platform, especially a database, becomes very important, because then you can start saying, well, given his history, given what he's doing right now, maybe this is what makes sense to the user. And in that spirit, the applications that are being built today, right, they're all built with the context of giving a full 360-degree view of the customer while offering something which is very personalized. And obviously, when it's personalized and is relevant to the user, it goes a long way in retaining customers in this market, especially like you said, in a dynamic market like India where things happen on the fly.
Yeah, great. So, in what ways does real time fraud monitoring go beyond traditional security measures to strengthen cybersecurity and payment and banking systems? And I would like to add, how does it enable proactive threat detection and response?
Sure, great question. In fact, this is something which I see in India, especially in the next few years. So it will become more and more relevant as more and more people are getting online, as fraud is beginning to pick up in a big way in India. This is going to become very, very important. But be it as it may, to talk about a few use cases where Aerospike is already being used in this space, we work with one of the largest payment companies in the world, which is based out of the US. And they have a challenge where during a real time transaction, let's say it's a credit card swipe that I've done or some kind of a payment I've done, it is important to identify whether the transaction is valid or not. Now, how do you do that? You do it by, obviously you build your data models or the models to identify whether, given the set of circumstances that have led to this transaction, is this fraudulent or not? Now, what would invariably happen in the context of security or fraud is that when you're doing all these kinds of checks, if you have a lot of scale hitting the system, meaning that a lot of people transacting online, maybe during Diwali or Christmas or whatever, then what happens is your database becomes a bottleneck. The database may not be able to fetch the data within the predefined SLAs, which you would require for a transaction. And generally, when you're not able to return that on time, you err on the side of caution. The payment company errs on the side of caution, which leads to what is called as a false positive. And when you have a false positive, essentially, you could lose out on the transaction. If I were to swipe a Visa card and the Visa card doesn't go through, immediately I swap it with my Diners Club card or a MasterCard. So it's money on the table that the credit card company loses. So having a real-time platform means that you can return the results in real time very, very quickly. And you can query on a whole bunch of different types of attributes in real time to identify whether this transaction is fraudulent or not. So in the context of large volumes of data, in the context of returning these results very, very quickly, having a real-time platform becomes very important. This particular payment company that I'm talking about in the US, it's a household name globally. They've been using Aerospike for probably around 8 years now with zero downtime. And any payment that happens, if there's a fraud check that happens in that particular transaction, it happens on Aerospike today.
Great, great. So, according to you, in what ways have PayPal, PhonePe, and Airtel payments differentiate themselves in the competitive digital payment landscape?
Yeah, I mean, each of them are unique in their own way, right? You look at PayPal, obviously a global brand name. You look at PhonePe and Airtel Payments Bank. In their own way, they have a very strong user base in India. And so to bring in commonalities across that is a challenge. But let me just being a Aerospike, having worked with these companies as part of Aerospike, I can give you some of the common themes across these platforms, right? So PhonePe and Airtel Payments Bank, primarily the challenge there is how do especially with PhonePe, they have such a huge user base that the challenge there is how do I provide these services in a very, very quick time across all these users that they have. And they have the largest installed base across the UPI stack, like we all know. So being able to offer a whole bunch of services to your original question about customer 360 and services across a whole bunch of areas, PhonePe does it better than most people do. They have things like recommendation engines which are relevant to users. They identify fraud as it happens, and essentially, when you transact through PhonePe, you get a great experience. It's really, really fast, and you get a response immediately. Whereas if you look at Airtel Payments Bank, while all this is true with Airtel Payments Bank, they also have a challenge of being able to provide. I mean, given the brand name of Airtel, you're talking not just a payment banking service, but also a telco service. So having a view of the customer across all these services. In fact, the telco today also has music service and a whole bunch of other areas that they offer services to. So being able to understand the user across all these different domains that we talk about becomes very critical. That's where they've been using Aerospike. With PayPal, I already talked about the use case in terms of fraud, in terms of how they're using us in the
Yes,
context
yes.
of fraud specifically. So across all these three different platforms, the commonality is that they've been able to provide a great customer experience to users, and they've been offering services in real time while making sure that the lights are on while preventing fraud while this happens. So that's how I think that's the commonality across all of them, and they all use a real-time platform like Aerospike to help.
Great, great customer use cases by Aerospike. And coming to the last question, what are the key factors that enable financial services providers to effectively take charge of their digital transformation initiatives? And how can they navigate the challenges and capitalize on the opportunities presented by the digital era, according to you?
Yeah, it's a great question actually, because having worked in this space for a while, and I've been working with financial and telco and e-commerce organizations for a long time now. What I find is organizations that do it well, that transform their business really well, they understand that transformation is just not a thing of technology. It's also about people and processes. Unless you have people aligned to what you're doing from a transformation perspective, and the processes are in place to do that, regardless of what kind of IT investment you make, may not necessarily bear the right results. And the other thing to remember is these kinds of transformation journeys, they happen over a period of time. It's not a one-off thing that I learned. Switch on the lights and immediately things change. With the companies that we are working with, I gave you a few examples in the financial space, companies like Airtel, a whole bunch of unicorns that we work with in India. You name the household, any household name in India in the unicorn space, they're using Aerospec pretty extensively. And across all these organizations, the common theme is when they transform their business to, especially when they move towards something which is more real time, they transform their entire organization. They get the people who can take the right decisions to in terms of making sure that the people are aligned, the technology initiatives are aligned, and most importantly, the processes that sometimes become a bottleneck, they are transformed as well. So I think for organizations, this becomes very critical across all the three dimensions that I talked about. There should be alignment, there should be fitment, and most importantly, there should be people who are willing to change. And that's when these initiatives take effect and transform organizations that we're talking about.
Correct. So we thank you, sir. It was a wonderful interaction, and we hope we have these kind of interactions more often for Aerospike. Thank you so much for joining today.
Likewise, thank you so much, Nidhi. It was a pleasure talking to you. Looking forward to
Same
it.
here. Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you.